Love is our true divine nature, and our heart serves as the intersection of the spiritual and physical, connecting our soul with our body as the conduit for anchoring our divinity onto the earth plane. Embodying our divinity is the key to our ascension and to manifesting our highest destiny in this life. The teachings of the heart are alchemy. Join spiritual mentor and channel Jennifer Spohr each week on a sacred journey to lift the veil to remembering your divinity and meet other beautiful souls who are living the path of the awakened heart. Hello, beautiful souls. I am really excited to welcome you back to the show today and to share with you a wonderful guest. Her name is Jessica Falcon. She is an international soul embodiment guide and relationship coach, and she guides you to embody your power, reclaim your sovereignty, and experience true freedom, which, as everyone knows, that is right up our alley here on Path of the Awakened Heart. So I'm excited to jump into this conversation with Jessica, and I recently had the pleasure of interviewing on her podcast and also on another show that she had, a year or two ago. So we've definitely been connected for a while, and it brings me a lot of joy to be able to share her light with you today. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. I'm excited to have a different kind of conversation with you on your podcast.
Yeah, it's always good. Yeah, and there is certainly always plenty to talk about, right? And I know we touched on that kind of in your podcast where the tables were turned with me as your guest recently, but there's a lot going on in the world, so lots to talk about for sure. I would love for you to really share with us more about, what your mission work essentially, and what inspired you to this path.
Yes. So big question. I'll try to answer in a short time
I know.
period.
She's like, how do I wrap that up in a little nice red bow?
Oh my gosh, like my path. I was just actually having a coffee meeting and talking about the path a little bit with a friend, and what a deep initiation it was by the goddess, and very dark. And at the same time, the reason it was dark is because I had to let the ego dissolve. I had to let the ego, the parts of me that found my identity externally, come face to face with those parts of myself so that I could resurrect into my soul truth. And it's an ancient rite of initiation. At the time, I didn't realize that it was an ancient rite of initiation. And I later learned that it was the same initiation path that Inanna took, the Sumerian goddess and queen of heaven and earth. And I knew I was being guided through something, and I knew I had to let go of all I'd ever known, and I knew I had to release all of the things I found security in. I was a criminal prosecutor, I was an attorney, I taught as an adjunct professor at university, I'd worked on Capitol Hill, governor's office. I was right on that very straight path to success, and I was very successful, and I actually enjoyed what I was doing. I liked my life. There was nothing wrong with my life. And at that time, I had a number of so-called natural disasters, traumatic incidences, potentially even a near-death experience and a bicycle accident. All these things happened in quick succession.
Mhm.
As I was going through the healing path, I kept hearing this soul voice say, leave everything, leave everything. And I'm like, how crazy is that? That's completely irresponsible and irrational. Eventually, I did surrender to the call. In the meantime, I had a visit from the goddess calling me on the path of initiation, lots of soul searching, lots of listening and trusting. And it's hard. It's hard to trust what no one else can see. It's hard to trust what isn't rational, what isn't logical, the opposite of what the world tells us. It's hard to trust that. And I ultimately did surrender into that, primarily because the disconnect between what I was doing and what I felt grew too strong. And partly because I was going crazy, because not trusting my inner soul voice meant I couldn't be in union. I couldn't be at peace. I can only be at peace, even now, when I'm trusting that inner soul voice,
Mm.
regardless of what it's asking me to do. So I surrendered and I left everything, absolutely everything, including my country that I was living in, and went into a pretty dark path after that. It didn't take me into fairies and rainbows and unicorns. It took me into an underworld. And it started when I arrived on the mountain of Mary Magdalene in southern France. I arrived on the date I dreamt of 7 months prior, met a man, saw the light in his eyes, heard a voice, he's your soulmate. And it was a very difficult yet karmic, necessary relationship that brought me face to face with the deepest, darkest aspects of myself. And I had the consciousness and the guidance from my spirit guides to start writing down all the subconscious beliefs that were coming up within me, so that eventually, when I left a year and a half later, I could start to get to the root of these beliefs: ancient civilizations, religious history, mythology. My guides guided me to all of this. None of this was something I thought or had an idea of. I just kept being guided over and over and over. And then eventually, now I'm working on that book, and my whole path to sovereignty, what I do is the result of these initiations, as a result of this 10 plus years of research and real deep soul reckoning with the subconscious that I believe is not just my own, but in the collective, around the beliefs that prohibit us from being in our power, from trusting ourselves, from uh, speaking our truth, living our truth. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And they're real. And I believe they were pretty intentionally programmed into us. And when we start to face them, we free ourselves and we experience life and relationships and our sexuality very differently. And so that's really at the core of what I do. That's the shortest answer I can give.
No, that's a fantastic answer. I really would love for us to delve more into relationships. I know that's a big part of the work that you do, um, and I know in my own experience, right, the way that I have navigated relationships has changed substantially. I would say, right, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago to now. I'd love for you to share with us more about that aspect of your work and your own experience of how navigating relationships has changed for you, right? Both I familial, romantic, platonic, because I feel like each category, for lack of a better way to put it, of our relationships has a different essence to it, right? Of how we navigate it.
It does. Familial relationships are very different than intimate partner relationships, in part because one is, we're born into it and we either accept and work with those dynamics or we don't. And the other, we are choosing, ideally. It's very different. We're not like bonded to them in the same way. We might be karmically bonded, but then you are in there to heal that bond
Yeah.
because karmic bonds are not the same as love. And that's where people get really confused, because it can feel like love because it's so familiar, or a soul connection, but it's not actually love. That was a huge part of my own learning. But you know, I love the question around how it's changed, because sovereignty is what changes how we show up in relationships. And until we reclaim our individual sovereignty, we can't actually experience freedom in our relationships.
Mhm.
That's really at the core of the work that I do, is helping people reclaim their sovereignty so that they can shift how they show up in relationships. And the wiring is, I'm going to wait for the other person to change, right? The wiring is, I'm going to focus on them and what they need and how they can heal. And generally, men and women, but especially women, are entrained to constantly focus on the other person, what they need, how they feel, what they desire. How do you see me? How do you want to see me? There's a lot of conforming, there's a lot of shifting, there's hiding parts they don't like, there's, I'm afraid to make them upset, let me not say that thing, I don't want conflict. And these keep us from not only revealing the truth of who we are, but it also prohibits true intimacy, true sexual desire and connection. It prohibits us from feeling free. People create resentment when they don't speak their truth, for example. And then there's a lot of separation created between people energetically when there's resentment in the relationship, when there are unspoken truths, when you're not voicing your needs but expect the other person to meet the needs, but you never say what they are, and then you're angry that they never meet the needs that you never voiced out loud. I mean,
That's a
right?
lot.
All of these
I
tensions
feel
occur.
overwhelmed listening to that. Like this, that, and yeah, it's like just talk to each other, all right? Just communicate.
Yeah, and the reality though is, for me, for example, I was being an expert advocate for everybody else as a criminal prosecutor. I did over 50 jury trials. I was very good at speaking for other people. I was very good at giving them voice. But when it came to myself in intimate or familiar relationship, the pattern was the same for me in this way. I could not speak for myself. I could not speak my own needs and feelings and desires, and a literal lump would form in my throat. And it couldn't come out no matter how hard I tried, because it was so deep, energetic, past life wounding. It was emotional. It was fear, 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 fear. They won't love me. They will reject me. They will abandon me. The list goes on. And it was a deeper fear of being afraid of being seen, even deeper fear, if I am seen, I won't be loved, right? This is how we have to trace these beliefs back. We have to trace these patterns back, because one, we're not alone. Everybody struggles with this in some way, shape, or form. Men too. I work with men as well. Men also struggle with this. And it's part of our soul healing. It's not just so that we can have a better relationship. For me, what became so clear is that as I was noticing my patterns in intimate relationship, they were also the deepest patterns within me,
Mhm.
that were me hiding my soul light, that were me dimming the truth of who I am, that were me reflected through my relationship with my partner, but not because of my partner. I took that in because I was holding that frequency. I was holding that emotional wounding. I was holding that. And the relationship highlighted it for me and showed me these patterns so I could come back into wholeness. And I still see these relationships as gifts. I
Mhm.
mentioned that I met my partner who we had a very, I would say, dark, some would say abusive, some would say toxic relationship. And I don't like any of those terms because to me they all feel confining. But it was very dark. And I completely lost myself in that relationship because I was so focused on him. But we met on the mountain of Mary Magdalene. And it was the beginning of an initiation into feminine power, because I had to clear the ways I denied myself,
Mhm.
sacrificed myself, silenced myself, but even deeper, I had to purify my own heart. I had to remember that love overflows and doesn't come at my expense. I had to really tap into true feminine power and connect with my body, connect with its wisdom, connect with its truth. And that was the only way out. I couldn't get out if I hadn't learned how to connect with my soul and its inner truth and my body, and really shift these patterns energetically and emotionally by accessing the subconscious, or else I would have been still locked into those patterns and I would have been locked in to the karma. And I knew on some level I had to free myself in this lifetime, because again, it wasn't about him. He was a gift. It was about me freeing myself. And when we start to look at relationships this way, I think it really shifts everything.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it really does. I mean, it's sounds cliche, but it's true. You know, relationships can be some of our greatest teachers. And I'm so not surprised when you shared about where you met him, right? Because you know, Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, Jesus, however someone listening likes to refer to him, right? They are two of the greatest examples of what I feel and live, in that it means to be embodied in divinity, right?
Mm, exactly.
And there is a dark aspect. And it is because we, for so many thousands of years, have been living within these ancestral and societal constructs that promote suppression of the truth of who we are, and constructs that have shamed us in sharing our truth, right? Whether that is something dark, or what our mission is here, whatever else it is, right? So naturally, it would feel difficult for us, and I've had some similar experiences, right? So it would feel difficult for us to face some of those things when you've spent your whole life being conditioned around that revealing any of the truth of who you are and your experiences is something terrible, and that it's a weakness, right? But it really just always amazes me, because it's literally, that is literally the opposite of who we are as these amazing beings. We are literally wired at a cellular level for evolution. So yeah, I mean, not to oversimplify our entire, journey, but to say most of the stuff that you've been taught, it's in society, it's just like, well, what do you do, right? What's the solution? It's simple. Do the opposite of what you've been told to do. That's probably the very simplest context to put it into, because the inversion is that wide and that deep.
Magdalene also, one of her biggest teachings was clearing shame, like sexual
Mhm.
shame, shame of who you are. She was persecuted for her truth over and over, called a whore because she represented feminine power, and or was one representation of feminine power. I think she was in a lineage of women who represented feminine power. And one of the things that for me I help clients with, and that because I don't teach anything, I don't practice and embody myself. I know it's similar for you, Jennifer. And one of the things that allows me to reveal more of my past or my experiences or these subconscious beliefs and wounds is because I've created internal safety. And part of that internal safety is not seeing myself as impure or tainted or dirty because of anything that's happened from me. And I've helped others heal from deep sexual wounding, as an example, by remembering their innate goodness and purity, and that nothing can take me away from that, that nothing destroys that. The invincible nature that we are, that we can access, that we can activate, that we can embody more and more of, is the key, is the way. And that is through the divine love that's ever present in us. And if somebody else sees me as, I don't know, something is wrong with me because maybe I went through a traumatic experience, right? Which is so crazy in and of itself to even think that that's what the mind does. But the mind can do that. It's okay, well, that's yours. It's not mine. So there's boundaries that have to be created, energetic boundaries, emotional boundaries, because we are so entrained. Part of the inversion is what you think becomes what I think because I see myself through your eyes, versus I see myself through the eyes of my soul, and I let that radiate outward, which is sovereignty, versus taking the world in, including the opinions of others, and making it your own. And I had to shift my energetics, because even when I was a little girl, I'll just take this to a whole different level, this conversation, I would experience entities come to me, dark entities, and I would contract and I would hide and I would fear. And I experienced this even into adulthood. And I've seen entities and numerous people. I can still see them when they're present. I don't interact with them or fear them anymore, but I'm still very aware. They're quite common, let's just say that. And I really had to come into the awareness that me contracting and dimming my light in response to perceived darkness, ego, thought, belief, programming, society, chaos, whatever we call that, was giving it more power versus recognizing the light. Simply recognizing the light, the divinity, the power within me is enough to dispel it. It's enough. That's enough. And that I don't have to take in what's around me. I don't have to fear it because I don't have to take it in. And so much of what we're wired to do is, I have to take this in. Oh, someone thinks this is me, this is my truth. We don't have to take it in, but we have to recognize our light in order to keep it out, what is not our truth.
Well, that's part of living embodied in sovereignty as well, right? Is uh getting just really anchored and clear on your truth, on your sense
Yeah.
of self. Then a whole lot of life becomes a lot easier, to be honest, to be completely honest, right? Because when you are so clear on your sense of self and who you know right away what's yours and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And you naturally, organically process and move through experiences, right? It doesn't mean that you don't have difficult days or challenging things that come along. The difference is that because you're so grounded in who you are able to process your experiences much more neutrally and allow them to move through your body, right? And move forward. Uh, and that's the other thing too, right? About we were talking about societal constructs. Uh, we're taught to do, right? And when we're not creating space for ourselves, that's where the confusion of who we are and what direction do we want to go in and all of those things, when we're questioning ourselves like that, it's because we're not honoring the stillness that we need as part of our well-being.
Yeah, I mean, let's just think about it mathematically. If you're spending 24 hours a day, or let's say 16 hours a day, listening to what other people think, what other people feel, what other people want, you're watching something, you're taking in something, you're at work, you're on the screen, you're having conversations, you're with your family, you hear, external world. Well, then how are you going to know what your inner self is saying? If you're not cultivating the presence in each moment, if you're not cultivating the relationship with your inner self, if you're not attuning to your heart, to your womb, to your core, if you're not allowing the space, creating the space to allow that wisdom to arise within you. And it doesn't require meditating for hours a day, but it does require a relationship that opens the channels of communication so
Mhm.
that you can hear and then distinguish between what is your truth and what is not your truth, because we hear things that aren't our truth either, right? Sometimes the inner voice is the subconscious or the critical voice, but with time and practice you can distinguish between which is which frequency is this. So is this leading me closer to love or away from it? Is this fear based or is this desire based? And really getting clear, but it takes time. It's a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, circling back on the note of relationship, right? Circling back to something we were talking about earlier in our conversation, I'd like to take it a little bit further, because I know that some who listen to this podcast have moved through a lot of the heavier, I would say heavier, really, or maybe more dense kind of feeling stages of initiation on their journey. And so I'd love for you to share what what are some of the most significant shifts and changes that occur when you've reached that space on your journey, right? In terms of how you're then navigating your relationships, both with yourself and with others.
Mm. Well, one might seem like the most obvious is that you just feel freer inside to express yourself, to be
Yeah.
yourself, to reveal yourself, which is huge. To just feel free to be you without the constructs of fear stopping you, without the fear of rejection ruling you, without that. what are they going to think? The concern, the fear of conflict, all of these things that stop that are minimized, if not diminished completely. And the other thing is that you've created so much safety inside yourself that it's okay when others don't agree. It doesn't have to become an argument. It doesn't have to be conflict. A
Yeah.
disagreement and conflict are not synonymous. They become synonymous when we are so afraid someone doesn't agree with us, something is wrong with us, right? That's when it becomes conflict. Disagreement is simply you being you, me being me. We either see things the same or we don't, but that doesn't have to interfere with love or connection unless we see it as conflict because, oh, that must mean something is wrong with me or something is wrong with you. And then we get into all these stories. So it creates more authentic connection in which both people feel freer to just express who they are, not just you, but the other person, because they're not afraid of your judgment, because they're not afraid you're going to attack, because they're not afraid of your tension or resentment. If they don't think the same way you do, if they say no when you ask them something, they feel freer to be who they are. They feel freer to open up, to express themselves. But women in particular have to learn how to let a man open up,
Mhm.
because when you hold feminine power and you embody love, men open and they are happy to open. But most men haven't been around true feminine embodied power, and so they don't in a masculine way. Now, that's a whole conversation, masculine and feminine. I'm not saying masculine or feminine is limited or man or woman. I'm talking about heterosexual relationships because that's my expertise and what I experience, but this can, of course, apply to all. But when men are around embodied feminine power, and by that I mean embodied love, rooted and grounded in self, they want to give, they open, they shift, they are also free to actually be their authentic selves, and they can release their armoring, and there's so much more true connection, heart-based connection when that happens. But often I think right now women are the ones having to hold that, so men feel safe because they don't actually feel safe with most women either,
Mhm.
because of the programming that has kept men and women separate. And so when they can feel that, they can open. They shift pretty rapidly, quite frankly. Their emotional bodies aren't as big as women's, generally. That's what I've witnessed. Their energetic bodies are therefore clearer and they can shift more clearly. What they have to work on are the mental beliefs and thoughts more than women. Women tend to have to work more on the emotional body. But the men are quick to shift. They're actually very quick to change, but they also need to feel safe. And when that safety is created between men and women in relationship, or anybody in relationship, even familial, when that safety is created, there's a lot more leaning in to true connection and expression and intimacy that can happen when that trust is there, because the trust is rooted in safety and safety is rooted in trust, and they're interlinked. This is another big teaching of Yeshua and Magdalene, is this trust and safety as what opens, I'll call a woman's magnetic floor, which is really what opens a woman into deeper sexual pleasure, for example, is that trust and safety. But men feel it too. They also have this aspects of them open and deepen when they can trust and feel safe with a woman. And a lot of women right now, because they're not actually in their embodied feminine power, are waiting for the men to do this. They're demanding it instead of elevating the man through their presence. And they're two very different things.
You know what you said just now about elevating presence, it really is something that is universal. It really does transcend gender, um, regardless of role, right, in the relationship. Because when we elevate our presence and more deeply embody the truth of who we are, in whatever aspect that is, it automatically shifts everyone around us, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. I've witnessed it firsthand in my own marriage too, as I have progressed, on my own journey, right? Really noticing certain shifts that have automatically taken place that didn't require a conversation, right? And that's really in any relationship dynamic, whether it's with a partner, familial, or otherwise, when we are living embodied as us, as the truth of who we are in our day-to-day lives and in our decisions, that really does most of the talking for us, to be honest. So, yeah, that. Jessica, I would love for you to share with us anything else that you're feeling guided to bring forward.
I'll follow up on what you just said, because one of the things I've noticed, for example, is that if I just hold heart, loving, grounded space for somebody, because I'm not reacting, because I'm not afraid of disagreement, because I'm willing to honor their truth, even if I don't like it,
Yeah.
because if I'm truly honoring their sovereign choice, because I'm honoring my sovereign choice, I can't just honor mine and not honor another person's. That's the wounding of the word sovereignty being thrown around a lot. Me. It's not me. Sovereignty is I am in sovereign choice. You are in sovereign choice. I recognize my divinity. I recognize your divinity. We are equal. Heart is always on the equal level playing field, always. Anytime it's up or above or below, it's ego. So we need to be really clear about that, because I see a lot of that wounding out there being portrayed as sovereignty when it's not. And when I'm able to hold that grounded state of love and allow the other person to be who they are, that automatically creates safety energetically. As you said, I don't have to say, oh, it's safe for you. I don't have to say, oh, I'm not judging you. Oh, I'm not condemning you. I don't have to say a word. I just hold the space. And it's felt in their nervous system, because we are electromagnetic beings. Our nervous systems are constantly communicating with each other, whether we like it or not. Whether
Mhm.
we like it or not, they are constantly communing. And when your nervous system is attuning to a higher frequency, it elevates the other nervous systems that can lift and respond, right? That's basic science. But beyond that, the nervous system is going, oh, there's safety here because there's love here. Wow, there's love here. That love is what allows me to fully express. So if we recognize that love, self-love, is what allows you to fully express. Your embodiment of love is what allows the other to fully express. And boom, healthy sovereign relationships.
Boom. I love it. For those who are feeling called to connect with you, where is the best place for them to go?
So my website is thepathtosovereignty.com. Now, it's easy to misspell sovereign, so I like to think of it as to reign, right? Sovereign, to reign
Right.
over self. So REIGN.
Mm-hmm.
And there I have a free course you can sign up for. It's a 12 days of transformation. It's free. Just enter your email address. You'll get 12 days in a row of really accessing deeper levels of sovereignty and your relationship patterns, your sexuality, your beliefs, your emotions, frequency, all of that. And the Soul Sovereignty podcast, of course, on which you were a guest, is on all major platforms as well. And I have a couple of other offerings, but that's the easiest way you can find me.
Wonderful. And we will have those links for those listening included in the show notes for easy access as well. Jessica, what a pleasure to be able to reconnect with you recently, to be on your show, to have you on my show, and to share these wonderful conversations. We just need to keep having more and more of them, right? Whether they're on a podcast platform or uh, day-to-day conversations that we're all having with each other, and I'm speaking about everyone, right? It's like knowing that it's so important, especially in the times that we're living in right now, to have the courage, and it does take courage to express our truth, to transcend those constructs.
It does, and it gets to become easier when you
Oh,
start to
yeah.
access that safety and that sovereignty and that love. And it's hard to do alone when you can't see what you can't see, which is why I do the kind of coaching and work I do, which I'm
Yeah,
sure is why you do the kind of work you do. It's sometimes you just can't see it. And sometimes you just need support. Sometimes we're living in a world where we are constantly bombarded with the opposite of sovereignty and the opposite of love. And so to anchor that and hold that is an incredibly powerful gift you give the world. And it's also really necessary and necessary to have some form of support around you too. So
absolutely. Thank you, Jessica, so much. What a joy to have you.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Path of the Awakened Heart. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or pathoftheawakenedheart.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about living with an awakened heart and navigating your ascension journey, visit me at jenniferspore.com.